can I say to the Prime Minister, this time he can't blame the Right Honourable Member for Maidenhead, he can't blame John Major, he can't blame the judges, he can't blame the civil servants, he can't sack the Cabinet Secretary again. There's only one person responsible for it, and that's him. This is his deal, it's his mess, it's his failure. For the first time in his life, it's time to take responsibility. It's time to fess up. Either he wasn't straight with the country about the deal in the first place, or he didn't understand it. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, a competent government would never have entered into a binding agreement with provisions it could not live with. And if such a government somehow missed the point but woke up later, it would have done what any competent business would do after it realises it can't live with the terms of a contract. It would negotiate a way out in good faith. And that's why, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is also unnecessary, because there is a mechanism designed for exactly this purpose in the protocol, in the agreement, the Joint Committee on the Northern Ireland Protocol. And what did the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster say on the 11th of March at the Brexit Select Committee? He was asked about the state aids issue, he'll recall that. And he said, and I quote, "The effective working of the protocol is a matter for the Joint Committee to resolve." The remaining issues to which this bill speaks aren't insignificant, but nor are they insurmountable. And that is the right way to pursue them, not an attempt at illegality. Now, let me come back to the excuses. Fourth, on Sunday, there was the Justice Secretary's the fire alarm defence. So we don't want to have to do this, but we might have to. I want to be clear with the House about something very, very important about a decision to pass this bill. And I have great respect for the Honourable Member for Bromley and Chislehurst. But I want to make this point. The very act of passing this bill is itself a breach of international law. And I think it's I think it'd be wrong for honourable and right honourable members on either side of the House to be under any illusions about this as they decide which lobby to go into tonight. If we pass this bill, even if there's a nod and a wink from the Prime Minister to the honourable member for Bromley and Chislehurst, we equip the government with the power to break the law. That in itself is a breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol and therefore a breach of international law.
Wait. I listen carefully to his formulation and understand much of what he says. However, an act passed by this House only becomes law when it comes into force. He would be right, I'd submit, to say that as soon as any of these provisions came into force, we will potentially breach international law. That is not quite the same thing, as I think he would fairly concede.
That's not a risk we are going to take, Madam Deputy Speaker. So the fire alarm defence simply doesn't work. And finally, I want to deal with the last defence, Madam Deputy Speaker. This was floated as a trial balloon, you might say, by the Northern Ireland Secretary. I believe it was last Tuesday. He said it was a breach of the law in a quote-unquote specific and limited way. Madam Deputy Speaker, this really is a new way of thinking about legal questions. It now turns out that breaking the law specifically and in a limited way is a reasonable defence for this government. We've all heard of self-defence, the alibi defence, the innocence defence. Now we have the Johnson defence. You can break the law, but in a specific and limited way. And Madam Deputy Speaker, think about the current grave context we face. The Home Secretary, out today in the newspapers, warning everyone, you must abide by the law. By the way, on this, the Home Secretary is absolutely right. And she says this, I know that as part of our national effort, the law-abiding majority will stick to these new rules, but there will be a small minority who do not. You couldn't make it up, Madam Deputy Speaker. What she didn't say in this article, but what we now know about this government, is that the Johnson defence means something very specific. There is one rule for the British public and another rule for this government. Pioneered by Cummings, implemented by Johnson. That is the Johnson rule. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is the wrong thing to do. It is not necessary, and it is also deeply damaging for the country. Let's just think about this in terms of the impact on our country in the negotiations. The government's hope is that this will make a deal more likely. But that relies on the notion that reneging on a deal we made less than a year ago with the party we are negotiating with will make them more likely to trust us, not less. If I think about our everyday lives, and if we think about an agreement we made a year ago with somebody, and we were seeking to have another negotiation with them, and we came along and unilaterally reneged on the first deal we made, would it make them more likely to trust us or less likely to trust us? Obviously, it would make them less likely to trust us. And we know the risks. I very much hope the Prime Minister gets a deal. We absolutely need a deal as a country. We know the risks of a no-deal strategy, of no deal if this strategy goes wrong. The Prime Minister said last week that no deal is somehow, quote-unquote, a good outcome. He's wrong. I hear from businesses all the time, and I'm sure the business secretary who's sitting in his place does too, who are deeply worried about the danger of no deal. I know what he thinks about their views because of his famous four-letter rant, but this is what they have to say. Nissan says there could be no guarantee about its Sunderland plant if there were tariffs on UK to EU trade. Ford have said no deal will be disastrous. The NFU say it will be catastrophic for British farming. Indeed, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, when he was in the job as DEFRA Secretary, said the same thing. We're in the biggest economic crisis for 300 years, the biggest public health crisis for 100 years. No deal is not some game. It's about the livelihoods of millions of people across our country. And what about the prize trade deal with the United States? I know the Prime Minister thinks he has a friend in President Trump, but even he must recognise he must be able to deal with both sides. This is what the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said. The UK must respect the Northern Ireland Protocol as signed with the EU. If the UK violates that international treaty and Brexit undermines the Good Friday Accord, there will be absolutely no chance of a US-UK trade agreement passing the Congress. This is the signal we're sending to our friends and allies around the world. The country known for the rule of law, the country that abides by the law, the country that founded international law. This is the signal we are sending. Madam Deputy Speaker, that's why we cannot support this bill, and we will oppose it tonight. The government must go back, remove the sections breaking international law, ensure the bill works in a way that respects the devolution settlements. That's what a responsible, competent and law-abiding government would do. This is a pivotal moment in determining the future of our country, who we are and how we operate. In shaping that future, we have to stand up for the traditions that matter, our commitment to the rule of law. This bill speaks of a government, a Prime Minister that is casual, not to say cavalier, and reckless about the gravity of the issues he confronts. He should be focusing on securing a Brexit deal, not breaking international law and risking no deal. He is cavalier on international law. He is cavalier on our traditions. This is not the serious leadership we need. That's why we will oppose this bill tonight. Yeah.